We trust people who behave in a trustworthy way, but we also challenge why they do what they do, or in other words, what their motivation is. One of the tools in my trust habits process is to build the right motivation so that we can form new habits that change old behaviors and build that trustworthiness. So the topic of motivation is not new to my trust research and my trust work. In this episode, I will show the overlap between motivation, the type of motivation, and trust. Right after this. Welcome to The Trust Show. I'm Yoram Solomon, your host, the author of the Book of Trust and facilitator of the Trust Habits Workshop. My mission is simple. I want to help you form habits that build your trustworthiness, because the answer to this question will have the biggest impact on your personal and professional success or failure. Can I trust you? Let's start with distinguishing between the two types of motivation, intrinsic and extrinsic. And I'll start with talking about motivation and effort. In order to be more trustworthy, you need to put effort. There is no doubt. In order to do anything, you need to put effort. In order to lose weight, you need to put effort. The effort, or the level of effort that you can put, relies or will take place if you have the right motivation, or the level of motivation is enough. So it's really as simple as this. If the motivation could be measured by some kind of, let's call it an energy metric, and the effort is measured by an energy metric, as long as the motivation is greater than the effort, you will go through the effort. If the motivation is smaller than the effort, you will not go through this effort. You might go through a smaller effort, a weaker effort, but you need to have enough motivation to go through a specific effort. The thing is, the effort that's required is kind of set. If you want to be trustworthy, then you need to put a certain level of effort to whatever behavior you need to change, which means that you need to have enough motivation. Okay, so we've established what the effort is versus motivation. Now there are two types of motivation. There is intrinsic motivation, and there is extrinsic motivation. So let me explain them. First of all, there's the effort. So I want you to imagine in your head the effort as a block in the middle. There is a natural outcome to that effort. If the effort is going on the treadmill every day, eating less, consuming fewer calories, and so on, the natural outcome is that you're going to lose weight, you're going to be healthier, you're going to feel better, you're going to look better. If the effort is to communicate with someone on a more regular basis, you're going to be more trusted by them if that's the thing that's holding you back. So this is the effort, and the natural outcome from this effort is that you're going to be trusted by them. Well, if that is enough, let's just agree that the fact that you're going to be trusted by someone else is an intrinsic motivator. Okay? It is. I mean, it motivates you. Maybe not enough, but it motivates you. It's a positive motivator. You consider it a positive motivator. The fact that you're going to lose weight, you consider, or the fact that you're going to feel better, you consider a positive motivator. That motivator motivates you for the effort. Again, maybe not enough, but it motivates you towards that effort. That's called intrinsic motivator. Intrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation comes from the natural outcome of the effort that you're trying to motivate. Intrinsic motivation comes from the natural outcome of the effort that you're trying to motivate. How about extrinsic motivator? Extrinsic motivator is motivating that effort by something that is completely unrelated to a natural outcome. It is not a natural outcome. It is a virtual outcome. It is an arbitrary outcome. It is an outcome that you decide. It's a connection that you make. So, for example, when I wanted to lose weight, the extrinsic motivator for me was my radio-controlled airplane hobby. I could not buy anything. I could not build anything. I could not fly any of my airplanes on a day in which I did not put the effort that was required. Actually, I did that on the day after. So today I had to put the effort to earn the rights to fly, build, buy, whatever, tomorrow. Now, is the fact that I can buy, build, or fly tomorrow naturally connected to the effort of, consuming a certain amount of calories or exercising? No, it's not. But it's still a motivator. I am the one who puts that link. Again, it's an arbitrary link. It's not a natural, it's an unnatural link. I'm putting it there. I'm the one who's closing the loop, and that is an extrinsic motivator. Extrinsic motivator is a motivator that has nothing to do with the natural outcome of the effort that you're trying to motivate. An extrinsic motivator comes from something that is completely unrelated to the effort that you're trying to motivate. Now, why is the intrinsic motivator not enough? It should be enough, right? I mean, do you want to be trusted by someone else? Yes. Why is it not enough for you to go through the effort? Do you want to lose weight? Yes. Do you want to look better? Yes. Do you want to feel better? Yes. Do you want to live longer? I don't know. So this is a positive intrinsic motivator. Why is it not enough to take you through the effort? And the problem is that typically, if the motivator, the natural outcome would be immediate, it might actually be enough. The problem is that typically this outcome is not immediate. It is deferred. It is delayed. We like immediate gratification. We don't like delayed gratification. And because it's delayed, there is a term from finance that's called net present value. You discount it for time. So if the outcome is going to happen today, I used to tell my daughters when they were kids, do good to other people and good things will happen to you. And one day I remember I asked my older daughter if she wanted to go with me to the pharmacy. I needed to pick up some medication. And she said, no, I'm kind of busy right now. And then I asked my younger daughter, do you want to come with me? She said, yes. And she came with me. And as we were waiting for them to fulfill the refill, the prescription, I told her, go to the toy aisle and pick yourself something for up to $5. She was shocked. She went and she started picking one thing, another thing, and eventually she picked up one thing and we went home. And when we came home, my older daughter asked, what is that? She pointed to the doll that my younger daughter picked up for $5. And I said, oh, it's simple. She did a good thing for me, and so I did a good thing for her. Well, that was immediate gratification. My older daughter immediately wanted to go with me to CVS again to buy some, but I didn't need to go to CVS anymore. So I'm trying to explain to them that the outcome might not be immediate. But typically, an immediate outcome, immediate gratification is a stronger motivator than a delayed gratification, even if it is natural outcome for the effort. Why? Because of that net present value. Because $1 million 3 years from now is worth less than $1 million today. So intrinsic motivator might just not be enough, and we will need to complement it with extrinsic motivator. Something that would motivate us for the effort, even though the link between the effort and that motivator is completely arbitrary. It's something that we have put in place. It is not the natural outcome. Here's an interesting question. So the intrinsic motivation is positive, but it's just not enough, and therefore you complement it with extrinsic motivation, something that is not the natural outcome of the effort, but will still motivate that effort because you make that connection. Are you doing it for the right reasons? Well, here's the thing. As long as you're forming habits, here's what will happen. You use an extrinsic motivator, okay? What does it do when you use it over a long period of time? It creates a habit. What does it mean? Having a habit means that it's easy, something becomes easier. You don't have to think about it all the time. The effort is almost not there anymore. How long, by the way, does it take to form a habit? You know, if you Google how long does it take to form a habit, you're going to find the numbers. I always ask this question in my classes. I get the numbers 66 and 21 days. Just because this is research show that it takes 21 days to form a habit. Another research shows 66. The answer is neither one of them is right. It depends on a lot of things. It depends on the level of effort. It depends on how strong is the intrinsic motivation until you complement it with the extrinsic motivation. It depends on how often do you do it. It depends on how significant is the effort. It depends on how important this is to you. There are a lot of things that it depends on. The time that it takes you to form the habit depends on to determine how long it's going to take. But when it does become a habit, what does it mean that it became a habit? It means that it's easier to continue than to stop. Think about it for a second. You know, if I told you today that there's absolutely no scientific support to the fact that brushing your teeth helps your health in any way, can you really stop? I mean, you've been doing it for the last 20, 30, 40, 50, or in my case, 60 years. I can't stop. There's something is going to be missing in my life if I don't brush my teeth anymore. So it becomes a habit when it's easier to continue than to stop, which means that the effort is easier. You don't need to think about it. You don't put as much effort. What happens then? The intrinsic motivator becomes enough, and you don't need the extrinsic motivation. But I started this part by asking the question, does the fact that you're doing it initially because of the extrinsic motivation means that you're not doing it for the right reasons? The answer is yes. It means that you're not doing it for the right reasons. However, as long as you continue the extrinsic motivation and develop new habits, and those habits will reduce the effort, make it easier, to the point that you don't need the extrinsic motivation anymore, then while the extrinsic motivation is not the right reason, it will get you there. But this will always only happen, and I'll get back to that again in the next section, as long as the intrinsic motivation is still positive. If the intrinsic motivation is not positive, then as soon as you stop the extrinsic motivation, you're going to stop the effort, period, because that's the only thing that's holding it. Heck, the intrinsic motivation might actually be an intrinsic demotivation, which means that you even need a stronger extrinsic motivation just to go through the effort. The analogy that I like to use for motivation, intrinsic and extrinsic, is the car engine. Okay, think about the car engine. What keeps it running? Okay, before you think that I'm looking for something way too sophisticated, I'm looking for fuel. Fuel keeps it running. As long as you keep giving it fuel, it will run. Running is the natural outcome of giving it fuel. Fuel is your intrinsic motivation. Fuel is your car engine's intrinsic motivation. But pour fuel into the engine, it's not going to start. What starts it? The answer is the starter. Now, can you run the car on the starter all the time? No, you can't. The starter is only there to provide enough extrinsic motivation. The fact that the starter is running is not the natural outcome of the engine running. It's completely separate. Provide extrinsic motivation as a starter. The engine will start running to the point where fuel is enough to keep it running. Does that make sense? Now think about it. I asked, what would happen if the intrinsic motivation is negative? It's not positive, or there is no intrinsic motivation or demotivation at all. What would happen? What would happen if you starve the engine from fuel? It would stop. You would run the starter, the engine will run. You stop the starter, the engine will stop because there's no fuel. So you need to keep the intrinsic motivation there, and it has to be positive, enough to run the engine, enough to get you through the effort as the effort becomes easier, as it becomes easier to continue than to stop. One of the questions that people ask is, you're trying to form these new habits, but at some point under pressure, we're going to see your true colors, right? Your true colors will come out. So this whole extrinsic motivation is worthless because when rubber meets the road, when things get rough, then your true colors come out. And you probably also heard that you can teach an old dog new tricks, right? It's not true. As long as there is some intrinsic motivation, that's enough to go through the effort. Once the effort becomes a habit and it's easier to continue than to stop, then there will be no true colors. You will become a new person. And there is a great quote that says that your habits are your habits define who you are, not your actions, your habits. Now I want to talk about something that's called the resentment cycle. I call it the resentment cycle. And it goes back to, is the natural outcome positive? And this time I'm going to assume that it's not, or it's not naturally, or it's not intuitively positive to you. You don't consider it to be positive. Last week in season 14, episode 6, I had a guest, Suzanne Smith. We talked about corporate social responsibility and environmental, social, and governance, CSR and ESG. And some companies just drop those initiatives as soon as they are not required. Nobody's asking for them. Nobody's demanding them. Recently, in Texas, a directive came out to drop all DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives from all Texas state universities. And a lot of universities around the nation are starting to drop those DEI requirements. Now, why are they doing it? Why are they doing it? They're doing it because they were doing them, DEI, sometimes CSR and ESG, they were doing it for the wrong reasons. They didn't consider those initiatives to be positive. So if they didn't consider the initiatives to be positive, what made them go through the effort of putting together a DEI program, a CSR program, an ESG program? Simple. They were required to. There was an external source, whether it was the state, whether it was laws, whether it was a code of ethics. And I talked about ethics in the past. And when you have a code of ethics, and the outcome of violating the code of ethics is not a natural outcome of whatever violation you did, then it's really an extrinsic motivator, even though it's called ethics and not laws. So the code of ethics requires you to do something. Laws require you to do something. A directive, an executive directive requires you to do something. One of the worst, by the way, types of extrinsic motivations are shaming. We shame companies to do something. If you don't do DEI, we're going to shame you. Would you be looking at that as a positive intrinsic motivator. What is the outcome of a DEI program, the effort of a DEI program? We have more diversity, we have more equity, we have more inclusion. Those are good things. What happens when we have a CSR, corporate social responsibility, or ESG program in place? The company helps its community, maybe the larger community, and it benefits from it. Those are positive things. But if the reasons to put them is negative, it's because somebody shamed you to do that, because law required you to do that, you don't consider it to be positive. So even though this should be a positive intrinsic motivator, you look at it as a negative intrinsic motivator. And what happens then? The minute the extrinsic motivator goes away, you drop it. The universities dropped DEI. They shouldn't have dropped it, but they shouldn't have adopted it for the wrong reasons either. There should have been a positive intrinsic motivator for them to say, even if the state dropped certain requirements, I'm going to implement it in a different way. I'm going to try and achieve the real goals of DEI because I think it's a good thing. You know, I remember in one of the companies I worked for, at some point, the IT, the information technology group, decided to take away what was administrative rights that users had of their computers. So all of a sudden, there are a lot of things that required administrator level on my computer that I couldn't do. And I asked them, why are you doing that? Well, because if you have administrative rights, you might do A, B, C, D, and that's going to hurt the computer, hurt the company, and so on. I said, there is absolutely nothing that you can prevent me from doing that I cannot find in 5 minutes a way around it. Do you want to prevent me from reaching a certain website? Do you want to see how long it takes for me to get to that website without administrative rights? So what do you do instead? What do you do instead of the state requires you to implement a DEI, and next year we're going to have elections, we're going to change parties, and all of a sudden this is no longer a requirement, and then the following year it is a requirement. What do? It comes down to something very, very, very simple. You educate people. You create, through education, the positive intrinsic motivator that will be required to go through the effort. Even if you need an extrinsic motivator initially, but you educate them. That's what I told our ID department. I told them, educate me, educate the other employees. Here is why you should do something. Here is why you should protect. Here is how you should protect the company. Here is how it's important. Here is what might happen. Educate me so you create a positive intrinsic motivator, because without a positive intrinsic motivator, once the extrinsic motivator goes away, there is no more effort. It will never become a habit. So let's bring trust again. And I'm going to make a broad statement here. We trust people who are intrinsically motivated to do something or on the path to do it. Maybe the intrinsic motivation is not enough for them right now, and they're complementing it with extrinsic motivation, but they do have a positive intrinsic motivation to do something that we would consider worth trusting. So we do go into the motivations of people. We often we're not satisfied with just seeing the behaviors or the actions that people take. We want to know what's below the fold. What is their motivation? Why are they doing something? And when we look below the fold, what we're going to find, or below the surface, what we're going to find is possibly a combination of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Discount the extrinsic motivation. Do they have enough intrinsic motivation to do what they're doing? Do they consider the intrinsic? Do they consider themselves being positively intrinsically motivated to go through the effort, to take the action, to demonstrate a certain behavior that we would consider trustworthy? So we do want to see some intrinsic motivation there. Hopefully enough intrinsic motivation so that we will know that even if we can see some extrinsic motivation, we know that at some point the extrinsic motivation will go away once the effort becomes a habit. How can you tell? How can you tell that someone is positively intrinsically motivated to go through the effort that I would consider trustworthy? I would say the first thing is ask. Just by asking, why are you doing this? And seeing their response, you will be able to tell. And again, I'm going back to the component of intimacy. When you do it in person, you're going to see the consistency between what they tell you and what their body language tells you. And if you see a consistency, if you see that they tell you, here's why I'm doing this, and I know that it's not a strong enough motivator yet, and I complemented it with an extrinsic motivator, but here's why I do that. Here's why I intrinsically am motivated to do that. And it is a positive motivation. And their body language is consistent with what they said, then you will believe that they are intrinsically motivated. You will see a genuine effort that in part is motivated intrinsically. This is what I have for you today. I know it kind of was a little philosophical, but I did want to link the motivation, and specifically intrinsic motivation, to trust and trustworthiness, not only in the context of how you form habits, but again, people do want to know why you are forming a habit. You're trying to gain my trust. I mean, obviously, you're going through a certain effort in order to gain my trust. And one of the things that's really important to me is, why are you doing it? Are you doing it because somebody is forcing you to do it? Are you doing it because someone shamed you to do it? Because if those two are true, then I know that it's as soon as the shaming goes away, as soon as the external force that is forcing you to do it goes away, you're going to go back to, what did we call it before? Your true colors, right? But if I know that there is an element, a strong enough positive element of intrinsic motivation, you're doing it for the right reasons, maybe plus something, but you're doing it for the right reasons, then it is a lot easier for me to trust you. That's it for today. I hope it made you think a little differently about trust and motivation. May trust be with you. This was The Trust Show. What would you like to know about trust and trustworthiness? Let me know and I'll answer it in a future episode. I would love to hear from you. Email me at yoram@thetrustshow.com. If you like this episode, subscribe to the show so you will automatically get notified when I release a new episode. Rate it. Write a review for this podcast, because those ratings help not only you, but also others looking for podcasts just like this. If you're looking for more resources to learn about how to build trust, be trusted, or know who to trust, look up my workshops, online courses, books, or go to my website, trusthabits.com. And remember that the answer to these two questions will have the biggest impact on your personal and professional success or failure. Can I trust you, and can you trust me? Thank you for listening or watching The Trust Show.